Why do you think it's so important for Christians, not just Jewish believers in Jesus, but for Christians, Protestant Christians, to connect with the Jewish roots of their faith? What does it help us understand? How does it impact, how we live out our walk?
So in my 20s, I read a book by Philip Yancey, evangelical writer. He wrote a book. It's one of my favorite books about Jesus, called The Jesus I Never Knew. And in this book, in a chapter called Jewish Roots and Soil, he writes, I can no more understand Jesus apart from his Jewishness, any more than I can understand Gandhi apart from his Indianness. And then he goes on and he says, if you really want to get to know Jesus's story, you need to get to know his story as you would anyone else's story and learn something about his culture, family, and background. Well, what better place to do that than the land that he grew up in and to actually see where he walked. So my challenge to Christians, to followers of Jesus, if you want to get to know Jesus better, get to know the world in which he lived in, and then connected to that too, I would say you need to get to know the scriptures Jesus read, the Bible Jesus read, which is Genesis through Malachi. The New Testament obviously didn't exist for Jesus. His scriptures were the Hebrew scriptures. And I love too, Paul writes in to his letter to Timothy. He writes to him that all scripture is God-breathed and is useful for teaching, rebuking, correcting, and training in righteousness, so that the servant of God might be thoroughly equipped for every good work. Well, when Paul writes that to his protege, Timothy, guess what doesn't exist yet? The New Testament doesn't exist. So what he's saying to Timothy, which is just as applicable to us, if you really want to be equipped at the life and the ministry that God has called you to, you better know the Bible Jesus read. And if you want to get to know the Bible Jesus read better, part of that, I think, should include, if you can do it, a pilgrimage to that land of Israel.
That's great. You know what? I've never heard that connection made between the Timothy passage and the fact that the the New Testament wouldn't have existed yet. Of course, it's true, but we don't always think in these terms. And one of my sort of, I think, big beefs is that evangelicals often take the New Testament as some sort of gospel, and the Old Testament as, any sort of promise we can extract, anything that is good for the church, let's take and apply that to us. And I never have an issue with the application. My issue is when we do it at the expense of the connection to the Jewish people and the nation of Israel, God's chosen people.
Thanks for watching. You can listen to this entire podcast on your favorite audio podcast platform. Find the link below. And while you're at it, don't forget to click subscribe and follow us on Facebook so you can stay connected to First Century Foundations.